This is the field of 68. I'm Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh in Auburn, Alabama. And this
is Straight Out the Jungle. Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle. My name is Vince Wolfram.
And I'm Jojo Cavanagh.
What a win it was for Auburn last night. A Johni Broome tip-in buzzer beater in Maui with a second left helps number 4 Auburn defeat Iowa State 83-81. What a game it was.
Yeah, this was absolutely insane. Me and you were both home. You're in Kentucky. I'm in New York. So we were both watching this with our families, both texting each other. It was absolute madness. It was the first time Auburn has ever beaten 2 top 5 non-conference teams in the same season. And we've done it in November. So
we're only 5 games in.
Yeah.
It's a sure sign of, 1, the hardest schedule in program history, and 2, this team is the real deal. Auburn is the 4th team in the history of the AP poll, dating all the way back to the early 1900s, to start a season 5-0 with multiple top 5 wins, and they're the first team to do so since Kansas in 1989-1990. That's a crazy stat. That's a long time ago. So it really proves that this team has what it takes early in the season.
Oh, 100%. And to bring it back to Kansas, this 18-point comeback win against the top 5 in the top 5 matchup hasn't happened since 2012 when number 4 Kansas beat number 3 Mizzou. So just not only was it a win, it was a comeback win. It showed the hustle and the heart of this team. And yeah, I mean, this team, we're going to talk about this later, but the resiliency of this team and just overall how we were down 18 and we came back and beat number 5 Iowa State. So anything can happen in Mountain.
It had every single look of what a March level game should. And I know we said that about Houston too, but I thought it was especially true with this one. Coming back from, like you said, 18 down, that's impressive. And you can do it against a team with the defense like Iowa State, led by your star player for Auburn. That's a big thing. And I know that star player is somebody that you wanted to kick this show off with.
Yeah, Johni Broome, once again, proving why he is a Naismith Player of the Year contender, why he is an All-American. I mean, you just see on Twitter, everyone talking about Johni Broome, like he is one of the top 5 players in college basketball, one of the best centers in college basketball, if not the best. He had 21 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks. He is now 4th all-time in blocks in Auburn history, his 3rd straight double-double, his 31st consecutive game with double figures. So just talk about, I mean, I can just go on and on. There's just more accolades to this man, but just his presence on this team. In the first half, which I'll touch on later, Iowa State's defense was kind of, you saw there was always 2 defenders on Johni Broome, especially when Johni and Dylan were on the court. And you heard the announcers talk about this was because they know Dylan's shooting compared to Johni's shooting isn't something that is like up to the par. They kind of just 2 defenders were always on Johni. He had a call for timeout. It was just they were attacking Johni. And in the second half, you kind of saw, especially when Johni Broome made some threes last night. And you love talking about this when he started talking that talk out, especially after that three. Yeah. So just an unreal game from number 4, especially, I mean, that last play. Bruce Pearl talked about how he trusted Denver to go up and try to make that layup. He didn't make it. And then Johni Broome was just there as he should be. He's the center of this team. And I feel like he also is just the core of this team. He's just unreal. And you know, I wanted to touch on this. He was 5 for 6 from the free throw line. Oh my God. I was so excited, especially like I said, this is a close game. We won by 2 points. So for Johni Broome to be 5 of 6 from the free throw line after coming into this game, what was it, 5 for 12, 42%? I can't forget those numbers because they were giving me like, I couldn't sleep at night because of those numbers. And last night I could sleep because Johni Broome made 5 of 6 free throws. So just an unreal game from Johni Broome.
Yeah, it was he was the unstoppable force we knew him to be. He had a great first half and a great second half. Sort of kept us in the game through its entirety. And like you said, there was some struggle with that Iowa State defense in the first half. They were pinning him in the pockets of the court, in the corners especially, and he was getting trapped. But that didn't stop him. That's the resilience that this team has. And it really, really showed in Johni's game last night. I mean, he had no energy left in the legs. on the last bucket. He's laying on the floor smiling, and his leg is cramping,
Yeah.
writhing in pain.
I had a
That's the
mini heart
kind of
attack, but
player
then
Johni Broome is.
oh yeah, I had a mini heart attack, and then you look at him and he's just like laughing, like doing the phone calls, and you're like, "Woo, we're okay." Which is the same thing with Chad. I know you wanted to touch on that. You have a mini heart attack, and then he comes back and just kills it.
Yeah, first half, we're 7 minutes into the game, and Chad Baker-Mazar rams knees with an Iowa State player. Not a lovely video to watch, but if you want to, I guess, if you're twisted and weird and want to look at injuries, go on Twitter and see it, because it was one of those where you go, oh, just not a good one. And you could tell he was really banged up. Knee to knee is never easy, and it looked like it hyperextended a little bit. Not pretty, but he only played 6 minutes, 40 seconds in the first half. 2 points. Nothing really to show from Chad Baker-Mazar in the first half, other than he was in the game and he was in it. Second half, though, he's warming up before we come back from halftime. You can see him on the floor. We'll put this video from my good friend Luca Flores in there of him in the pregame before the second half, warming up, trying to get going. And man, was he the spark plug for Auburn in the second half. He basically, in my opinion, Chad Baker-Mazara won this game in the second half for Auburn. There was no player that brought the energy like he did in the second half. There was no player that was, maybe Johni Broome, that was as reliable scoring the basketball as Chad Baker-Mazara was in half number two. Um, Early in the second half, there was a span of 2 minutes and 13 seconds, went on a 9-0 run, and we cut the lead from 18 to 10. That was a huge point in the game, and it was led by Chad Baker-Mazara. A big three to get us back in, and then a 13-0 run later to bring us within two, also scattered with Chad Baker-Mazara buckets. He was our saving grace. Big threes from the wing. I think the wing was his special spot in Maui. I think that if he's in that spot, the wing was his happy place. He was just nailing everything from the wing, either side. So a big game from Chad Baker-Mazara, 16 of his 18 points coming in the second half. He was 5 for 8 from the field, 3 of 4 from three, which showed because every time it left the lefty's hand, I thought it was cash. 5 for 5 from the free throw line too, so a great showing, especially down the stretch from CBM. Plus, I mean, you add 3 rebounds and a couple of steals in there too, an all-around complete game from Chad Baker-Mazara. Very impressed. And I think we've had one guy in each game so far.
I knew you were gonna bring this
I'm
up.
gonna I'm gonna tab this game the CBM game. I'm gonna do it. It was a Chad Baker-Mazara special.
Yeah, I was literally thinking that as I was watching this game. I was like, it's a new player. We're gonna talk about this. Add it to the line.
Yeah.
Iowa
First
State
half,
and CBM.
I was like, where's our guy? No one's having a breakout game yet. What in the world? And then Chad Baker-Mazara was like, hey, here
Oh
I
yeah.
am. All right, let's have a big second half.
Yeah, we've talked about it before, how I think it was against Vermont, our season opener. He had like the first 5 points that provided that spark. This time it wasn't at the beginning of the game, it was in the second half. Auburn needed that spark desperately. I don't even know if Chad Baker-Mazara didn't was still hurt and didn't come back in this game if we would have won this game. Like you said, he won this game for us in the second half. Those back-to-back threes, I just remember like getting off my couch screaming. Like it was just he provided that spark, he provided that energy like he always does, but just it hit different in Maui and against number 5 Iowa State.
Yeah, I was hoping that when he got hurt that he would at least come back because his energy is just so contagious, and you can
Mhm.
tell it's fun, it's light, but it's also very tough. And that's something he talked about after the game. Let's listen to him now.
I would just bump knees one of the guy and, probably hit like a bad spot. And then, I always say, my mama raised a warrior. So if I'm not dead, I'm going out there in the court. So just basically had to soak it in and just, come out there and put a fight for the boys because I know they have my back and the coaching staff. So, I got to do the same for them.
A warrior indeed. I'll tell you what, that guy, he plays like a dog all the time.
Yeah, and Chad Baker-Mazara had an insane second half. But in the first half, there was the freshman that kind of gave us that spark, and that was Tahad Pettiford. He's kind of the lone ranger on this team where in the first he played better in the first half than the second half. That's probably because he had 12 minutes in the first half, 7 in the second half. But Tahad Pettiford had 10 points in the first half. He had 4 in the second, but that's he provided the spark kind of in the first half. There wasn't really one, Auburn was down 18 while he was on the field, but when he made that three in the beginning of the game, I think he made 3 threes throughout the entire game, like, and some of them were like from beyond, like literally
From the volleyball lines.
yeah. But Todd Pettiford in that first half gave Auburn, I think, a little hope. Granted, we were still down by a large amount, but just that the freshman, like we said, he plays better when the lights are brighter. And the lights were definitely bright in Maui against number 5 Iowa State, down 18. You would think a veteran would make those threes, but it was a freshman that came through and just gave Auburn points on the board so that the deficit wasn't over 20.
Yeah, it was an interesting sort of performance. Like the second half, it was almost like he didn't need to do as much because
Yeah.
Chad was back, Chennai was back. There's a lot of players that made a much bigger difference in the second half, which we'll touch on later. But I remember seeing those couple first half threes, and I was like, Jojo, he might do this thing again where he goes off. He very well could. The signs are here. The writing is on the wall. But Todd Pettiford certainly provided that spark in the first half. And it's when Auburn didn't quite have one. So
Mm-hmm.
he stepped up in the moment where he was needed. I think he did his job perfectly last night.
Yeah, and just the fact that that's from a freshman like stepping up when needed. No one was making those threes, no one was making those shots in the first half. Tahad was, and he gave his team hope going into halftime.
From a freshman to an upperclassman, a guy that stepped up to me was Dylan Cardwell. His game is so key to Auburn. I can't even put it into words. The amount of glue guy things that Dylan Cardwell does on the floor that save Auburn, that will never show up in a box score, that your average fan, not a reporter, an analyst like us, would ever realize. He does so much for this team. There were so many times yesterday where you could tell his impact and his motor was really going and was really impacting this team. I mean, he's a 7-foot guy that if he gets switched on guards, which he did a lot yesterday, I know Gilbert and Jefferson, they had them in a lot of different screening actions to where they would switch a big man onto a guard. Dylan would get on that island, and I had faith that he would get a stop. That's rare. That's not a normal thing when a 7-foot, huge, strong guy like Dylan Cardwell can be put on the 3-point line guarding a 6'1" speedy guard that is their leading scorer and get a stop. There was times in the second half where Gilbert would get him on a one-on-one drive and Dylan would send it. Like that's what he does. And every time he's playing defense in the post against a big man, I'm throwing the mortgage on Dylan. Like I am full confidence that Dylan Cardwell can get a stop. The amount of times last night where a big or a small forward from Iowa State got the ball in the mid post, mid range sort of in, and Dylan was on him, I knew it was going to be a defensive rebound because Dylan's his ability to defer shots, his ability to get in and sort of cause a shooter some stress is high, and he did that an awful lot. I think Auburn scored 14 second chance points. On offense, I think a lot of that can be attributed to Dylan Cardwell. The amount of times where he catches middle and finds someone on the wings in the corners, the amount of times he tips the ball. I wish there was a stat on tips because when the ball goes up and it's a miss, Dylan Cardwell is never not there to either grab the board and find a shooter or find a shooter and tip the ball out. His IQ is just on those glue guy things is so high. So I think Dylan probably had a lot to do with those 14 second chance points.
Yeah, and when, like you said, when you're an average fan watching this game, you can kind of not see the impact that Dylan Cardwell had on this game. You're watching a game through like the lens of me and you, and you go look at the box score, he only had 2 points, but his plus and minus, once again, he had 14, the largest of the entire team. So that is the impact he has on this team. Johni had 9, he was kind of behind Dylan, but Dylan had 14 plus or minus. So when Dylan was on the court, Auburn was a better team. And that may not be clear from a fan's point of view, like I said, but when you're watching it through a more analytical, technical lens, you can kind of see the impact that Dylan Cardwell has on this team.
100%. I like to call him the big guard. I texted him after the game. I was like, Auburn's brand new point guard, Dylan Cardwell. He had the one play where he got the ball, tried to hand it off. I think it was to Hod or JP, and then fumbled a little bit. He got the big man on the island. He brought him on a little Z cut back to the hoop, and that's what
Yeah,
Dylan does. He's a big guard. Somebody put this guy in a point guard. Bruce, come on, man.
he would be definitely the tallest point guard in all of college basketball.
Ever. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring it back a little bit to the first half with Auburn's struggles, and that is specifically because of Iowa State's defense. So coming into this game, I mean, I talked about it in the Maui preview. I was like, Iowa State's a great team, but they haven't played anyone yet. But their defense showed like they played the number one, number two team. Like their defense was unreal. Coming into the game, they have the top scoring defense in the country, one turnover every 4 possessions, and forced almost 20 turnovers per game. So that that stat should have scared us, should have scared Auburn. And in the first half, it showed why they have the top scoring defense in the country. Auburn came in averaging 9 turnovers per game, 7 turnovers for Auburn in the first half. So if you look at kind of like the score margin from turnovers, Auburn had 0 points off of turnovers in the first half. Iowa State had 11. That is a massive deficit considering Auburn was down 18, 11 points on Iowa State was from turnovers. In the second half, still Auburn came back at 4 points off turnovers in the second half, but then Iowa State had 8 in the second half. So just Iowa State's defense was forcing those turnovers. Like I said, they were double teaming Johni Broome. You saw that double team on Chad Baker-Mazara play. Like they knew when we had our best players with the ball, they knew exactly when to double team them. They knew when Auburn was going to call a timeout or when they were going to force a turnover, when they were going to go and get that point off a turnover. So just the deficit between Auburn and Iowa State, like Iowa State's defense definitely like showed up and showed out in the first and the second half. You know, Auburn got that spark in the second half, but in the first half, I mean, all I could watch, all I could see was Iowa State's dominant defense, and that was because of their turnovers.
Yeah, Iowa State in the first half looked like a kid on Christmas morning. They were eating Auburn alive. As frank as
Mhm.
I can be about that. Like Auburn
Yeah.
started 1 for 5 with 3 turnovers in the first 4 minutes of the game. Iowa State's defense is suffocating.
Yeah.
That's how good they are. And it's similar to how Auburn played in the second half. It was like they were getting after the guards. They were trying to trap the big men. They were doing what they needed to do to get Auburn in trouble spots. And Auburn did not respond. Like that's why it
No.
was Iowa State had an 18-point lead in the first half. Was solely because of their defense and because of Gilbert, Jefferson, the guards for Iowa State scoring the basketball like they did. But I mean, I think it just tired Auburn out in the first half because of
Yeah.
how aggressive they were, trapping everything. It was Auburn. Auburn was always on alert, which is something like they had to play hard the whole game against Houston, and they had to play smart against Houston. But this was the first time I think Auburn got caught not really playing as smart as they had been. And I think it woke them up in the second half.
Yeah, 100%. You heard the announcers constantly talk about how Iowa State 100% watched the Houston game because everything that Auburn tried to do in the Houston game, they could not do against Iowa State's defense. That probably was a combination of just Auburn, like you said, not playing smart, but also just Iowa State's scout team of Auburn was on point, and you saw that in the first half with their defense.
Yeah, Cyclones, yes, scout team, shout out to you, I guess. Um, it really did cause Auburn a lot of troubles, and we saw that with the first half shooting numbers for the
Mhm.
Tigers. It wasn't pretty. We'll say that. It was not pretty. They
Not
shot
fun to watch.
38% in the first half. It to me, I don't know how it felt to you. It felt way lower.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was kind of hard to watch. I was watching this and I was like, oh no, like we're gonna have to do our first pod with a loss.
Yeah, no, I was like when I saw it was 38%, I was like, wow, that ain't half bad. But like when I was watching it, it was like Iowa State had us like
Yeah.
it didn't seem as close as the stats made it seem. I mean, we were shooting 28% from three. I think that's what Dylan shot from three last year. So that should give you all the need you know on Auburn's 3 pointers in the first half. I mean, if you look at the individuals, Denver 0 for 4, Janai 2 for 6, Miles 1 for 5. Tahad was a bright spot shooting 50%. He was 3 for
Yep.
6 in the first half, but a lot of lulls for Auburn. And I guess some of that was attributed to foul trouble too, not just in the first half, but in the second half as well. Cheney had 3 quick fouls. Dylan had quick ones as well, which ended up bringing in Jaheim Hudson for you. What did I call it? The plane train for you plane
Hmm.
train listeners. Jaheim Hudson got in the game for the first time last night, took one shot, missed it. But it's good to see number 8 back on the court. But he was basically in because of foul trouble. because we were thin at the big man position. Simo moved to that 4 position. Johni moved back to the 5 position when Chaney and Dylan were both struggling with fouls. But that is something we definitely need to watch going forward. Is like Auburn can't afford really to get in foul trouble. They have the depth. Yes, they do. But a lot of times it may put them at a disadvantage. When 2 guys like Chaney and Dylan are out, Chaney's like our best shooter. He's one of our top defenders, one of our best shot blockers. We need him in the game. Dylan, I've talked about him. I think he's low-key a star on this team, with a lot of upside. We have to have those guys in the game. They can't afford to have Chaney had 3 fouls way early. Came in for 1 play and got his 4th foul. I know that's just how the game goes, and you can't control that, but if you're Chaney Johnson, you can't afford that. Like, you're too important of a piece to this team, and a lot of guys had fouls. Dylan had 4, Chad had 4, Chaney obviously had 4, Denver had 3 after not fouling anybody for the eternity of his Auburn career. That was crazy to me. I was like, "Whoa, that's a stat I
Yes.
didn't expect." Miles Kelly with 3 fouls too, so I think something they've gotta work on. Denver talked about it with us, talked about it to the media. Playing without fouling is gonna be a huge thing going forward. In this tournament alone, against a team like UNC tonight and tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, and the next couple of weeks across the season, if we keep on winning, that's gonna be a key.
Yeah, I think there were a lot of controversial fouls. There were like a couple flagrants we saw. I mean, we won this game largely without the presence of Chaney Johnson. He had 4 points, but like you said, in the second half, came in, got a foul. Like we didn't see him. And he is shooting, what was it, 68% coming into this game, which is the highest on the team. So we won this game without statistically our best shooter on the team. So that says a
Yeah.
lot. And then you look at there was, I think, like at the end, that 4-point play from that Chad Baker-Mazara foul. We cannot afford that. There were a couple of plays where Dylan Cardwell kind of bailed the other team out. There was 2 seconds on the shot clock, and he does a little foul. You see Bruce screaming at him, like, you just bailed him out. Like, there are a couple of points where you need to play smarter when you cannot bail out the other team. 2 seconds on the shot clock. There was no reason to foul there. With Chad, there was no reason to foul there because we were up, and then we let him get that 4-point play, put them right back in the game. So I think it's a little bit of kind of trying to play smarter. Again, this was a heated game. We were down 18. Emotions were high, but that's something that I think Auburn needs to work on, which Denver said, guarding without fouling. They need to guard our yard. And that was a little bit of a struggle last night, but
Love guard your yard. It's my
yeah.
favorite. But no, I completely agree, and I wanna talk about that Chad Baker-Mazara foul. 77-73, you're up 4 points. Gilbert gets a fast break, pump fakes, gets Chad in the air. To me, I'm usually a proponent of replay, like, I like when they go to replay. In live action, that is a normal foul to me. After the replay and after you watch it 15 times slow and you see Chad's arm sort of extend, sure, it's a foul. But I thought in real time, in real game, I thought that was I mean, that would have been anyone's reaction. Someone fakes, you jump in the air, of course, you're gonna try to catch yourself a little bit. You might bounce off him so you don't fall on your face. Chad had done that enough already, he hit the guy in the face, he had the whole thing, pulled the guy's headband off twice. Besides
Twice.
the point. I think I think that play, it very much switched the game. That's a 4-point lead, and with a flagrant one like Chad ended up getting, you get 2 free throws because you were going up for a shot, so
And the
he
ball
made
back.
both of those, and then they get the ball back, and of course, knowing Auburn's luck, Iowa State scores, ties the game 77 with a minute to play. Like, you cannot afford to do that. I know it's just one of those it could be one of those fluke things like it was last night, but something like that, like, if we don't make our free throws, that game goes in another direction. That's a tiny, tiny little thing that can be so easily wiped from the game, but could
Mhm.
have such a large effect. So that's stuff that we need to watch going forward, I think.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said, I was so happy. Johni Broome was 5 or 6 from the free throw line, and then Chad Baker-Mazara and Denver Jones were both perfect from the free throw line. Denver Jones made those 2 clutch free throws, and the jumper gave us the lead with that kind of like 4 points from him. But the free throw line, like I said, coming into this game was going to be a massive aspect of this game, and we were lucky that Johni Broome finally made some, and then the other guys kind of came up in clutch moments.
Yeah, and I guess we'll end this show on a positive note. This team is a team full of dogs. We got some studs on this team. I tell you what, They're resilient and they're experienced. And you add resilience and experience, and you get Manning games down the stretch. And that's exactly what this number 4 ranked team did last night. Let's take a look at some of these players. Denver in the second half, 10 of his 12 points came in the second half. Obviously, he didn't make the last shot, but made a couple of clutch free throws and a clutch J in the last couple of minutes to keep Auburn in the mix. You look at Miles Kelly, 12 points, 9 of them in the second half. Big threes from him. I think a lot of his shots were super, super close, too. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
expecting big things from Miles Kelly. I think he likes the rims in Maui. They look a little bouncy to me. I'm sure that's
Yes.
what he likes, too. Look at Chad. We've talked about it. 18 points on the game, 16 in the second half. And my favorite hustle player in all of college basketball, Chris Simo Moore, had the tiniest little glue guy utility man plays that just won Auburn this game.
Yeah, I love watching Simo. When Simo is on the court, you can tell he puts in so much effort. Like he's the hardest worker on the court. The hustle and just the energy he provides on the court. He had a couple clutch plays. He was defending, he was getting the ball. Like just he is the hardest worker on the court when he's on there.
100%. He got a steal deflection off an inbounds play that led to points. Simo, a smart play down the stretch, led to our 7-0 run with 3 minutes left to put us up by 4 before that Chad Baker-Mazara foul. He got a smart play, gave it to Denver, hit a 3. Simo, I mean, just the Energizer Bunny when it comes to getting rebounds, taking charges, getting steals, getting deflections. His hands plays with wide hands, which is a big thing. Simo is awesome, and he is similar to Dylan. You're not gonna see it every day in this box score in the stat sheet, but he makes such a difference. That's a fifth-year senior really putting his stamp on a big win for Auburn.
100%. So not only did Auburn beat Iowa State after overcoming an 18-point deficit, and it was a 2-point win, but anything can happen in Maui. It was a crazy day yesterday. Like you just saw all over Twitter, like we don't sleep till March. It's like you don't sleep in Maui. The day started off crazy. Number 2 UConn gets upset by Memphis. UConn was down 13 and then comes back into overtime, loses in overtime, which is massive because a lot of people thought, the championship game could be Auburn, UConn. So number 2 UConn is out. Memphis moves up. Michigan State, Colorado, Michigan State moves up. So today we will see Memphis and Michigan State play. Then Auburn came in, obviously, beat Iowa State. And then last night, a very late game, UNC Dayton, number 12 North Carolina. Number 12 North Carolina had to overcome a 20-point deficit to beat unranked Dayton. So tonight, Auburn plays number 12 North Carolina on ESPN, finally, at 11 o'clock at night. But both teams had to overcome massive deficits. So this is bound to be a great game.
Yeah, this is going to be a dogfight of the underground kings, I think. They came back from at least 15 down in both games. We've talked about UNC a little bit. RJ Davis, he's one of the top players in college basketball, returned for another year under Hubert Davis in the teal and white. I think the Tar Heels are tough. I think they're going to give Auburn a great shot. I think it's going to be another fantastic game in Maui. I'm a little bit nervous about playing potentially 3 games in 3 days, but especially 2 games in 2 days, because when you're at the top of your game and you're playing the top of your game, that's just tiring stuff. But if anybody can do it, I'm sure Bruce Pearl has these guys conditioned. That's why they run all summer long. That's why he pushes them to the level that he does. I also want to touch on UConn yesterday. The end of that game, like if you watch it, it was absurd. Like there was
Yeah.
the amount of crazy stuff that happened in that UConn game. And Dan Hurley, I know his post-game press conference made me wail laughing. Like he's so nonchalantly funny and also like digging at the refs. He's like, hated the officiating tonight, but you know, maybe I tripped. Maybe that's why I was so mad. Or he was just getting I kind of want to put it in back-to-back episodes here with Dan Hurley sound bites, but this one was just too good to pass.
But I had a lot of issues with what went on out there in the game. That over the back call at that point of the game, there was no attempt to block out. There was a player on Memphis that made a half-ass effort to rebound that basketball, and Liam McNeely high-pointed that rebound. For that call to be made at that point in the game was a complete joke, all right? And then for me, I don't know what happened. I might have lost my balance by the absurdity of the call, or maybe I tripped. But if I made that call at that point, I would have ignored the fact that I was on my back. If I made that call, I would have ignored that. I would have ignored that. That was a major, obviously a major. How you could call that while that game was going on, the way that game was going on, is just beyond me. But I know, I've never seen the one ref before. I didn't even know he was a college ref. And then, you know, I'm familiar with the other two, so I'm not surprised.
I mean, see, like, how funny is that? Dan Hurley with the humor in the post-game press conference after a loss. It's rare you see that because, you know, he's a competitive dude.
Yeah, it was just the officiating yesterday had all the coaches going crazy. You saw Dan Hurley going crazy. You saw Bruce Pearl going crazy. I mean,
He almost had that heart attack like he talked to us about. He was like, is this the game that Bruce Pearl
You
has the heart attack? You could see the neck veins.
you literally just read my mind. I was literally about to say he almost had that heart attack in Maui. Like, that is crazy. You literally just read my mind. But yeah, coaches were going crazy yesterday. Like I said, apparently you don't sleep in Maui. The games are crazy. The coaches are going crazy. The officiating is crazy. The players are crazy. It is just, it's like a tournament that happens in March. That's kind of what this tournament feels like. So it's fun.
Yeah, it's a November version of March Madness, and I couldn't be happier watching it. Give me a Thanksgiving break men's basketball tournament. I'm watching every single game. Memphis, Michigan State today, Auburn, North Carolina in the winners bracket. It's going to be a great set of games, so make sure to tune in. We will have all things Auburn, UNC tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned. Win or loss, we'll be here bright and early giving you the updates from Maui. Jojo, you got anything else?
Yeah, just it's a late night game, but we will be up bright and early to give you guys our recap. But in that case, be sure to like, comment, and most definitely subscribe. All of our links will be in this video below. And yeah, this has been Straight Out of the Jungle from New York. I'm Jojo Cavanagh.
From Louisville, Kentucky, I'm Vince Wolfram. War Eagle.
War Eagle.